"That's my inheritance," my son said, snapping the receipt between his fingers like it was evidence in a trial. The words landed before I even had time to register his tone. I was standing in my laundry room doorway, the new washer still humming from its first cycle cardboard packaging stacked neatly by the wall. The air smelled faintly of fresh plastic and detergent. I'd been proud of the purchase in a quiet, private way. My old machine had rattled itself to death after 2 decades. This one was efficient, solid something I could rely on. I thought that was allowed. "You're 72?" Nathan continued. "Why are you wasting our inheritance on a washer?" "Our inheritance. Not your savings, not your money. Ours." I took the receipt from his hand, smoothed the crease he'd made, and folded it along the edge. My fingers didn't shake. I noticed that with some surprise. "Oh," I said. I didn't realize I needed permission to wash my own clothes. I met his eyes when I said it. No raised voice, no sarcasm. Just a statement, clean and exact. For a second, he looked thrown like he'd expected tears or anger and didn't know what to do with calm. He started pacing the length of the kitchen. He does that when he's building a case when he thinks logic will corner you. "You have to think about the future," he said. "Medical costs, assisted living, long-term care. You can't just spend like this. Spend like what I asked, like you're not on a fixed timeline. A timeline." As if my life were a countdown clock he was managing. The washer beeped softly, announcing the end of its cycle. The sound cut through his speech. I turned, walked back into the laundry room, and opened the door. Steam rolled out, warm and clean. I reached in and pulled out a towel, thick and perfectly spun, and folded it over my arm. Behind me, Nathan was still talking about projections and responsibility and family assets. I listened to the rhythm of his voice more than the words. It struck me that he sounded less like a son and more like an accountant auditing a client he didn't trust. I carried the basket to the table and began folding each corner, aligned each movement, deliberate, while a colder, clearer thought settled into place. I needed to see exactly what he thought he was protecting. The house was quiet after he left. Not the kind of quiet that settles it. Lingered like dust after something breaks. I stood at the window for a long while, watching the streetlights come on one by one. My laundry was folded, stacked neatly in the basket, waiting to be put away. I left it there. I made tea I didn't really want, and sat at the kitchen table where the receipt still lay smooth and creased. I opened the drawer beside me, the one where I kept small warranties, clipped coupons, and handwritten notes to myself. It was a drawer full of careful decisions, the kind you make when you've spent your whole life ensuring everyone else had what they needed. There was a printout of Nathan's college tuition schedule in there, paid in full every semester. A note about the half of his wedding I covered $28,000, so he and Rachel could have a day that looked like a magazine spread. I'd never once asked for any of it back. It hadn't even occurred to me. I closed the drawer slowly, then pushed my tea aside and reached for my laptop. It took a moment to remember my login. When the screen lit up, I was almost startled by how familiar it all looked. Even though I hadn't checked in for months, I didn't need to. Everything was automated. Everything was steady. But now I wanted to see. Really see. I opened each account one by one. My pension, my 401k, the joint life insurance policy, Social Security deposits, mutual funds, a few CDs I'd kept for stability. All told, it added up to $2.4 million in liquid assets. I stared at the number for a long time. The house paid off 12 years ago was recently appraised at just over $600,000. I added it mentally to the total and sat back in my chair. I didn't feel proud. Not even relieved. I felt something else, something smaller and sharper. He thought he was protecting me from ruin. He didn't realize I'd already protected us both quietly, relentlessly for decades. He didn't know what I had because he never asked. and now I wasn't sure I wanted to tell him. Instead, I opened a new tab and typed Patricia's name into my contacts. Patricia answered on the second ring, her voice warm and efficient in the way it had always been. I told her I wanted to meet. I didn't say why. She didn't ask. We settled on lunch the next day. I arrived early and sat with my hands folded around a glass of water, rehearsing the conversation in my head. When she walked in, she looked exactly the same as she had 15 years ago when we first started working together. Sharp suit, sharp eyes, no wasted motion. She hugged me lightly, sat down, and ordered coffee before turning her full attention to me. "What's going on?" she asked. I told her everything. The washer, the receipt, the word inheritance hanging in my kitchen like a verdict. I repeated Nathan's phrases as accurately as I could. Fixed timeline, family money, responsibility. Patricia didn't interrupt. She didn't nod sympathetically or frown. She just listened, her fingers steepled under her chin. When I finished, there was a small silence. "And what do you want to do?" she asked. The question landed heavier than I expected. Not what should you do? Not what makes sense. What do you want? "I want clarity," I said slowly. "I want my assets arranged in a way that reflects my choices, not his expectations." Patricia's mouth curved slightly. "That's very doable." She pulled out her tablet and started outlining options. Trust structures, charitable vehicles, estate reallocations. She spoke in clean lines and numbers, translating my life into systems I could move. None of it felt abstract. It felt precise, like drafting a contract with my future. We talked through scenarios. If I funded a scholarship, if I reduced Nathan's share, if I kept the house separate. Every choice had a consequence. None of them were catastrophic. By the time dessert arrived untouched between us, I could see the shape of a plan forming. "I want to change my will," I said. Patricia nodded once, as if she'd been waiting for me to say it. "Then we start there." I looked down at the outline she'd sketched and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not anger, not guilt. Intention. A blueprint that belonged to me. I picked up my phone and scrolled to my attorney's number, Michael. My attorney greeted me with his usual polite reserve, though I caught a flicker of curiosity behind his glasses when I said I wanted to amend my will. He pulled out my file thick from years of careful planning and waited. "I want to create a scholarship fund," I said, "for single parents in Minnesota pursuing higher education." He blinked once. "That's a substantial shift from your current plan." I nodded. $2 million. The fund will be established upon my death. The remainder, including the house, goes to Nathan. Michael didn't rush to fill the silence. He knew me well enough to wait until I spoke on my own terms. "I want it clearly worded," I said. "No loopholes. The fund is to be administered independently, and it's not to be dissolved, sold off, or rerouted." He scribbled notes, then glanced up. "May I ask what prompted this?" I considered how much to tell him. I settled on just enough. I realized I said that I want my life's work to go toward building something, not padding someone else's expectations. He sat back in his chair and gave a single, slow nod. "That's a legacy with structure." It took a week to finalize. I reviewed every clause twice, asked every question that came to mind. Michael never pushed, only clarified. When I signed the final page, there was no trembling in my hand. The envelope sat on my dining room table for the rest of the day. I didn't put it in the safe until after dinner. I didn't tell Nathan. I didn't tell Rachel. I didn't tell anyone. There was something peaceful about that, about holding a decision without sharing it, about knowing the shape of something before anyone else saw it. It was mine alone for now. But changing the will had only been the first step. I could feel it already. Something else stirring underneath the paperwork, something unsettled. Because the more I thought about what Nathan had said, the more I wondered what else he assumed belonged to him, and what I might still be able to take back. I typed Whitmore and Associates into the search bar and leaned back, letting the page load. It was a firm I'd heard Nathan mention in passing for years, never with passion, always with the self-importance of someone who thinks presence is enough. Still, I'd never been curious until now. The homepage was polished, predictable, generic stock photos, buzzwords stacked like bricks, boutique consulting multi-sector strategy family values. That last one made me exhale a sharp, quiet laugh. I moved past the surface and began clicking deeper, cross-checking business listings, board filings, archived news pages. After 2 hours, I had a rough sketch. The company wasn't big, just nimble enough to avoid the kind of scrutiny that catches sloppy decisions. That explained the sudden expansion Nathan had boasted about, but it also revealed something else. Ownership was oddly fragmented. A quiet LLC had recently acquired 11% of the firm, and that LLC, it wasn't a name I recognized, but it was traceable to a dormant account I hadn't touched in a decade. One I had forgotten still existed. I called Patricia that night. "What if I wanted to own it?" I asked, stirring sugar into my tea. There was a pause. Then her voice came back, low measured. "Own what exactly? Nathan's company?" A longer pause this time. "Eva Laura, are you serious?" As a heart attack. I heard her chair creak as she shifted. Then we start by reactivating the trust. Quietly. Through the blind. We'll set up a management proxy. No paper trail with your name. Yet. By the next morning, Patricia had a plan, and I had a reason to stand straighter. The assets I'd buried in fear of needing them later were exactly what gave me power now. Later that week, while Nathan complained about interest rates and I let him explain financial literacy to me over breakfast, I nodded, smiled, and thought about the board vote coming up in June. He didn't see it yet. But the thread he pulled when he mocked a washer was the one unraveling the life he took for granted. And I was already tracing it to the seam. 6 weeks passed. Quietly, deliberately. Each day I woke early, made my tea, and put on the same cardigan I'd worn for years, outwardly unchanged. But beneath the routine, something was moving. I reconnected with 3 former colleagues from the hospital, 2 of them now private investors with more capital than patience. The third retired, but still sharp, knew how to read a balance sheet like a heartbeat. I told them about Whitmore. I laid out the risk and the opportunity. I didn't need them to say yes, but they did. Patricia set the terms. The structure was clean, the paper trail segmented, the LLC name bland enough to pass unnoticed in board filings. I leveraged 2 low-interest loans against my securities. I tapped an account I hadn't touched since Nathan was in high school. The money was there. The will was there too. By December 10th, the final agreement was signed. I held 51% of Whitmore and Associates, legally, quietly, completely. Nathan still didn't know. He kissed my cheek at Thanksgiving and told me I looked tired. I smiled and asked if the kids liked the board games I brought. He didn't notice my eyes watching him a little longer than usual. There was no grand office to visit, no ribbon to cut. Just an email confirmation from Patricia at 8:17 a.m., and a secure folder of documents with my name typed neatly on every page that mattered. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Power I'd learned was less about volume and more about timing. That week, while folding laundry, I imagined the firm's staff meeting. I pictured Nathan speaking with the usual conviction, unaware that the majority vote in any future decision belonged to a woman who once cut coupons for dish soap. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm. I'd spent decades being reasonable, quiet, cautious. That silence hadn't made me weak. It had made me invisible long enough to move without being seen. And now that I'd arrived where I needed to be, I didn't plan to announce it. I planned to wait until he opened the wrong door and found me on the other side. Christmas dinner was loud in the way young families are loud. Plates clattered. The children argued over who got which seat. Rachel moved between the stove and the table with tight efficiency. I sat where I was placed and let the noise move around me. Nathan waited until the second course to begin. "We've been talking," he said, not looking at me at first. "Rachel and I think it might be smart for you to start planning ahead. Senior communities, wait lists, that kind of thing." I cut my food into careful squares. "Planning ahead for what?" "For the next phase," he said. "Your house is a lot to manage. It's just sitting there. You could sell it. Simplify, bank the money while you still can." "While you still can." Rachel nodded, like this was kindness. "There are beautiful places now. Amenities, social activities. You wouldn't be alone all the time." I set my fork down. The sound was small, but it cut cleanly through the table talk. Nathan finally looked at me. "I changed my will," I said. He blinked. "What I changed my will," I repeated, my voice steady. "Most of my estate is going to a scholarship fund. For single parents." The air shifted. Rachel's smile collapsed first. Nathan's face went blank in a way that was almost childlike. "You can't be serious," he said. "I am. That's our inheritance." "No," I said quietly. "It's my money." He pushed his chair back an inch. The children had gone silent without understanding why. Rachel stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "This is because of the washer," he said. "You're blowing up everything over a washer." I let the accusation sit there. Then I added the part I'd been holding. "I also bought your company." For a moment, no one moved. Nathan actually laughed, a short, brittle sound. "That's not funny." "I'm not joking," I said. "I own 51% of Whitmore." His chair scraped back hard this time. Rachel covered her mouth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I let the silence do the work I'd prepared it to do. I picked up my purse, kissed the children on the head, and walked to the door while Nathan was still trying to find words. Behind me, the house stayed frozen, suspended in the space between what he thought he controlled and what he had just learned he never did. I drove home without turning on the radio, knowing the quiet that followed would be louder than anything we'd said. 2 weeks passed without a single call. At first, I kept my phone on the table beside me, screen facing up the way you do when you're pretending not to wait. By the third day, I turned it face down. By the seventh, I stopped carrying it from room to room. Silence, I realized, had a weight, but it also had edges. Once you felt them, you could decide where to stand. I kept the house running on its usual rhythm. Dishes washed, beds made, mail sorted into neat stacks. On Tuesday morning, I carried a basket of towels into the laundry room and opened the washer. The metal drum was cool and empty, waiting. I placed each towel inside with care, smoothing the corners as if they might object to being crumpled. I poured detergent into the tray, closed the lid, and pressed start. The machine came to life with a low, steady hum. Water rushed in. The towels shifted, and the cycle began. I leaned against the counter and watched the motion through the glass. There was comfort in it. Order, cause and effect. You put something in, you let the system do its work, and eventually it comes out clean. No arguments, no negotiations. I thought about Christmas dinner and the way Nathan's face had emptied when he realized I wasn't bluffing. I didn't replay it with satisfaction. I replayed it with clarity. For the first time, our positions were honest. He knew what was mine. I knew what was his. The lines were visible. The washer clicked into a faster spin. The sound filled the small room, steady as a pulse. I realized I didn't feel abandoned. I felt unhooked. The constant tension of being managed, evaluated, gently corrected by my own child had gone quiet with him. When the cycle finished, I moved the towels to the dryer and started another load. The repetition soothed me. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was maintaining. It was January 3rd when Nathan finally called. His voice was softer than usual, almost unsure. "Can we talk?" he asked. I told him I'd meet him in St. Paul, somewhere public, somewhere neutral. The coffee shop was half empty when I arrived. He was already seated by the window, a mug in front of him, both hands wrapped around it, like he needed grounding. He stood when he saw me, but I just nodded and sat down. "Thanks for coming," he said. I waited. He looked thinner, tired in a way that went beyond the holidays. After a long pause, he finally said, "I've been thinking a lot since Christmas." I stayed quiet. He let out a slow breath. "I treated you like a trust fund, not like a person." That landed. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was the first honest thing he'd said to me in months. "I think I forgot who you were before you were my mom," he continued. "You always just made things work. You didn't complain. I assumed that meant you were fine with it, that you didn't have your own wants." I stirred the tea I hadn't touched. "And now I see that I didn't ask. I decided you were someone I had to manage like a future liability." "That's awful to say out loud." "It's accurate," I said gently. He flinched a little, then nodded. "I don't expect you to change the will back. I just needed you to know that I heard you." I watched him for a long moment. "I never needed you to agree with my choices. I only ever wanted you to respect them. I know. I spent years making decisions with everyone else in mind, and now I've made a few with just myself in mind. That isn't selfish. It's overdue." Nathan looked down into his cup. "Rachel said I treated you like a ledger. I didn't say anything. She wasn't wrong. I want to do better." "Then start by understanding that I'm not your responsibility. I'm your mother, not your investment." He looked up, eyes red but clear. "Deal." I reached for my tea. It had cooled, but it still tasted right. The house felt steady when I came back through the door. I slipped off my shoes, hung up my coat, and set the kettle on the stove. No rush, no noise. The warmth of the quiet was different now, earned, not imposed. While the water boiled, I folded the last of the laundry from earlier that morning. The towels were warm, soft, clean. I stacked them in even piles, slid them into the hallway closet, and took a breath that reached all the way to the base of my spine. The washer had just finished its last cycle. I could still hear the faint tick of the drum slowing the mechanical sigh of a job completed. I didn't need to watch it anymore. I trusted it now. I trusted myself. I poured my tea and brought it to the table, the same table where Nathan had once left a crumpled receipt to make a point. The paper was long gone, but the point had been made, just not in the way he expected. I opened my laptop and signed in. The email to Patricia was short. Subject: next steps. Body: let's talk about the next investment. I think I'm ready to build something new. I read it once, then hit send. It wasn't about Nathan. Not anymore. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even restoration. It was the simple act of reclaiming space, of choosing to fill my own life now while it was still mine to shape. I'd spent so many years preparing for a future I might not get to see. For everyone else's safety. For everyone else's comfort. But I was still here. I still had mornings. I still had breath. I still had ideas. And I still had enough left in me to surprise a few people, including myself. The washer clicked off completely. I sipped my tea, feeling its warmth spread through my chest. Outside, the wind moved through the trees without asking anyone's permission. And inside, so did I.